In this course, you'll learn how to create technical screencasts and courses that are highly effective, succinct, and popular with the viewers. If you teach technical content, then this course will help you create better videos. My name is Don Felker. I'm an independent software developer, freelancer, consultant, author, and speaker, and I've been creating technical videos for well over 15 years. And this course that you're now watching is a culmination of everything that I have learned and experienced over the last 15 years that helped me create very popular video courses and tutorials. In my technical videos, I do not add any fluff or any nuanced content to any of my videos. The goal of my videos is to be straight and to the point and to not waste any of the viewers' time. I want to hop directly into what their problem is, show them how to solve it so they can get on with their workday. I don't want to have them scrubbing through a video of me talking and providing all different types of input just for them to find the solution that they're looking for. And that's what I'm going to show you in this course. I should also mention that this course was originally created for a company that I was part of before. This company was a tech education platform that's no longer around. And a lot of those video courses have migrated already here to YouTube. This course was private internally and was given to all the instructors that joined the platform to teach them how to create very succinct and effective courses. But now, since that company is no longer around, I'm open sourcing all this content here on YouTube. Lastly, some of the tools that you're going to see inside of this course may have been updated by the time that you watch this video. Some of the buttons might look different, the menus might look different, and some of the tools might not even exist anymore at all. However, the concepts and the tips and tricks you're going to learn will apply to all different tools that you use. It doesn't matter if you're using the same screen recording software that I'm using. It doesn't matter if you're using the same audio equipment. The same concepts apply. It doesn't matter if it's for audio leveling or if it's for video production. The concepts will apply regardless of the tools. If you follow the tips inside of this short course, I guarantee that the production value of your videos will skyrocket and your viewers will appreciate it greatly. Now, this course is formatted in very much the same way that I tell you to teach your own courses. It's very succinct. So as soon as this introduction is over, I'm gonna hop right into it. Now, there is one thing that I did change. Originally, this entire course was broken up into multiple different individual videos. I have combined all of those into one video at this time. Therefore, each section does have an introduction slide. Now, I do have a special section in this course that says that you shouldn't have introduction slides, and you'll see why. However, in the format of this video, because I've compressed all the videos into one long video, which you're now watching, you'll see that there are introduction slides to simply break apart each of the individual lessons. Now that's it. I really hope you get a lot out of this course, and I'll see you at the end. Let's get started.
To create a good title, start with the question, how do I? And then answer that question. The answer to that question will be the title of your lesson. For example, assuming that I'm teaching a lesson about how to set a click listener on Android, I would say, how do I set a click listener in Android? And my title for the lesson would be Set a Click Listener in Android. It's also important to understand the context in which you're teaching. For example, we are teaching inside of Android, but we're working inside of the Kotlin language. Since Android can be developed with Java or Kotlin, it could be appropriate here to add an additional qualifier, such as Kotlin on Android, turning the lesson title into Set a Click Listener in Kotlin on Android. Identifying keywords and qualifiers such as the word Kotlin will help enhance your title to ensure that it ranks higher in SEO and also provides a clear understanding to the viewer of what's being taught in the lesson. Avoid title, summary, and outro slides. For example, this would be a title slide that you would want to avoid. There's no need to add a title slide to a video. You should hop directly into the content. If your lesson is teaching a couple of concepts together as a cohesive unit, you'll want to avoid a summary slide as well and hop directly into the content and teach the user by showing them. You'll want to avoid outro slides. This would be an example of an outro slide. End the lesson as soon as the content is complete. The viewer can always rewind and cover the material again. The main focus should always be on showing the viewer what we're trying to teach them. However, it is necessary sometimes to provide additional learning aids, such as slides, to help facilitate the understanding and comprehension of the content you're teaching. Assuming that we're explaining the scan operator here, it may be difficult to relate the concepts simply given this simple operator on one line of code. However, it would be really beneficial to show the viewer a marble diagram, such as this. This is an example of when it would be very beneficial to show a learning aid such as a slide to help drive the point home and facilitate learning comprehension of a particular topic. Here you could use the marble diagram to explain how the scan operator works. Additional slides that may be acceptable inside of various lessons are certain diagrams. For example, this diagram could be used to explain how dependency injection might work in a web, console, or any other type of application. It helps facilitate the understanding of various logical layers of the application, as viewing the logical layers in an application simply through a file explorer can be very difficult to understand, especially for introductory and beginner students. Another example is actually a flowchart and stating how an architecture is built behind the scenes. This is something that's also very difficult to relate simply by talking about it in text on the screen. A visual aid such as this can really drive the point home of how something is built to help give the viewer a mental model that they can learn from. This is an additional example, perhaps, of how you might be working with something in Firebase, such as remote config, cloud functions, custom servers, and how the application would integrate with the entire process. This would be another acceptable slide that you could use. Using a chart to help facilitate and drive a point home can be very useful. In this case, it's simply an AWS EC2 pricing chart. However, in various different environments and various different implementations, charts can be very useful for driving a point home. Often we have to juxtapose various different components, systems, applications, libraries, etc. across a wide range of various features and implementations. A table is a very good use for how to juxtapose those different things together and compare them. This would also be an acceptable slide that you would present inside of a lesson. Flowcharts are excellent examples of things that should be inside of slides to help facilitate learning. This example is based upon the Git flow approach for Git branching and management of Git branches. It's much easier to visualize when looking at the various different swim lanes here than it is to simply talk about it. If you find yourself creating slides based around text, please reconsider that option, as most likely they are not necessary. Slides should only be used when additional learning aids to help drive the point home are necessary. Avoid intros and outros to your videos. If you're talking about various different log statements in Android, you would start by explaining the content that you're teaching immediately. You would not want to start the video like this. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the various different types of log statements that you can use in Android Studio. That's not necessary. Also, you would want to avoid any personal introduction such as, "Hello, my name is Don Felker, and I'd like to welcome you to this course on how to work with log statements in Android Studio." Both of those statements don't add anything to the content, and the viewer can already get those things from the course or the lesson description. Lastly, after you've perhaps explained everything that you would like to explain in the video, such as these log statements here, go ahead and end the lesson right there. You would not want to add any outros such as, "In this lesson, we talked about the debug, error, warning, and info log statements in Android Studio." You would not want to add those as they add no additional content, and if your user would like to review them, they can always rewind the video. Avoid intro videos for courses, as they are not needed. You may feel compelled to create an intro video to describe what the course is about and perhaps what the viewer may learn. However, these intro videos are not necessary. The title and the course description should provide enough information for the viewer to understand what the actual course is about and what will be covered in the course. The first video should start off with actually introduction to the content directly. This could be building the app, setting the stage for the learning environment, or setting up an environment. Use the default light theme or the default dark theme in the IDE of your choice when presenting content. For example, this is the default light theme in Android Studio. Another acceptable theme in Android Studio or any IntelliJ product would be the default dark theme. Most IDEs will have a default dark and default light. Please use either one of those. The reason why you want to use a default color theme that is high contrast is because it is easy to see, easy to read, and it does not confuse the viewer. It's a familiar territory to them. They understand what they've seen here, and They will not be wondering why a custom theme has been used. So please avoid any themes that perhaps have blue material design aspects to them or anything of that nature. Use the default themes such as light or dark. If you're using another IDE such as VS Code, you'll want to use the default light theme, or you can also use the default dark theme inside of VS Code to present content. When developing many lessons for a course, you'll want to ensure that you're using the same theme the entire time when developing them. Therefore, in the middle of the course or even the next lesson, you should not switch from one theme to another theme. This will confuse the viewer. They will wonder why you're switching between themes and will remove their focus from the content that you are teaching. Prior to recording, you'll want to ensure that your screen is set to the proper resolution. If you're using the RDM tool, you'll want to make sure that it is set to the 1280 by 720 with a lightning bolt. That means that it's a high resolution, high DPI retina environment. This will allow us to output a very crisp final result. If you're using Switch Res X, you'll want to choose the 1280 by 720 high DPI. And this is what I'm currently set to at this point in time. Prior to recording, you want to make sure that your recording is configured properly. You want to make sure that your correct desktop is selected. Whatever screen that you're recording could be an external monitor or your internal laptop monitor. You'll also want to make sure that you're recording from the correct audio input device. You want to make sure that you're recording either from your audio interface, such as an Onyx Blackjack, a Focusrite, or whatever audio interface that you have. Or if you're using a USB microphone, such as the ATR 2100, you'll want to make sure that you select that from within this drop-down box. Lastly, you'll want to make sure that you actually see the audio spectrum analyzer. It should be coming somewhere close between a quarter to halfway up when you're speaking. So then if you were to cough or anything of that nature, have a loud noise, it might peak up just barely right below the red area in the spectrum analyzer. You want to remove all the distractions from your learning environment. The first place you can start is going to be the dock. So you want to hide the dock by default. The second place will be the menu bar. To clean up the menu bar, you'll need to use a tool such as Vanilla. And when Vanilla is enabled, it will hide all of the menu bar items that are currently not within the application. There's also another option known as Bartender. Bartender is a paid product which will hide your menu bar items as well, or you can download the free vanilla menu bar cleaner, which is what I'm using here. Now the IDE is much more visible. To clean it up even further, you can go full screen. This will provide a full immersive learning experience in the given IDE that you have. There are times, such as in Android Studio, that you would like to go full screen. You can do that here. However, there are also times where full screen mode will not work for you because perhaps you need to show an emulator on the screen as well. In those instances, please just have the menu bar cleaned, the dock hidden, and then you can move over the IDE and show the emulator. You'll also want to ensure that no desktop notifications interrupt your flow. To do that, you'll Alt-click on the notification icon to disable desktop notifications while recording. If showing the browser to display content, you want to ensure that your bookmarks are hidden, and you will not want to have a bunch of icons and various tabs open. You'll want a clean set of tabs, such as this. Therefore, the user is not distracted by all of the various open tabs that you currently have. They should not be distracted at all. They should have a clean menu bar, a simple browser, and that's it. Make sure that there's movement on the screen every 8 to 10 seconds when recording your lessons. The reason for this is viewers are not sure if the video is frozen, yet the audio stream is still continuing, which is something we've all encountered on various different video platforms. Furthermore, and more importantly, it keeps the viewer engaged with your content. So if you're explaining something and you haven't moved in 8 to 10 seconds, you should perform one of the following steps. You can add some text to the screen, so you can start typing. You can also add an arrow like this to highlight something, and this is going to be done via an annotation inside of the screencasting software. If you're not going to add an arrow, you could also add text like this. And another method is also to highlight part of the screen by fading out the rest of it. You can also zoom into a piece of code like this to make it stand out from the rest of the code. Remain on topic when teaching your content. If you were explaining this chunk of code here, you would talk about how the observable is coming from an array. Then you're using the reduce function to perform the operation of addition across all of the items in the observable to then print out the final result to Logcat and Android. You would explain that. However, you may feel compelled to talk about why you decided to use reduce instead of using a number of other operators such as scan or something else like that. However, please refrain from doing so. If you feel that there is a necessary need to explain why you have used a particular function, in this case, such as reduce, other than scan or anything else, that is a perfect opportunity for another lesson to educate the viewer on the difference between the reduce and scan operator. The goal is to stay on topic. Therefore, the user will not get distracted regarding the content you're teaching. When creating videos, you'll want to remove any of the extraneous content that doesn't add intrinsic value, such as anytime you're refreshing Gradle dependencies, the output does not provide any additional value. Simply refresh and then cut that part out and move forward. Anytime you have build output, the build can take a long time depending upon what you're doing inside of your application and the type of application you're building. Depends if it's Android or another language. You can go ahead and avoid that. Simply say, we're going to build this and then fade into the new part where everything is built. The same for any type of terminal output. If there's long-running commands that have a bunch of output, you can show yourself issuing the command, explain what it will do, and then come back when that's completed. The viewer does not want to watch us type or watch a stream of text fly by on the screen. Another area in which it's very common to see extraneous content is when you're typing a lot of code. For example, if the lesson that we're looking at here was titled Create an RxJava Observable, you might see code that looks like this. If I had to type all of that code, that would have taken quite a while to take, perhaps upwards of a minute to type all of the code that you see here without any errors. The viewer does not want to watch us type anything whatsoever, so we should go ahead and create the code, and then we can show it and then start explaining it with either by using the mouse and drawing attention to various pieces, using callouts such as arrows or rectangles or zoom in or any of the tools in your post-production library. Another way to do this would be to actually fast forward all of the content as you're actually explaining it. So here's what that would look like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a disposable. It's not created yet, but just hang in there. It'll be created in 1 second. The observable is going to be created from an array of values, 100, 200, and 300, and then I'm going to immediately subscribe to it. And in the subscription, that's where the values are going to be emitted. From there, I'm going to log those values to Logcat with the tag of foo, and we can see here with the it variable is just going to be the values either 100, 200, or 300. Since we have a subscription, RxJava will return us a disposable, and that disposable allows us to clean up from the observable subscription itself. Inside of the onDestroy method, which is called when the activity is shutting down, we can go ahead and dispose of the disposable to clean up after ourselves. As you can see, I sped up the typing and had the typing happen at the same time when I was speaking. So that made it much more engaging. The viewer was able to see what was happening. This can be very difficult, so you have to play with what works for you. Sometimes you can do it in post-production. Sometimes you need to plan a little bit more. But the ultimate goal is to remove any extraneous content from the viewer that would be distracting or would not provide any intrinsic additional value. When teaching content, you'll want to teach everything bit by bit, as to leave no spaces of any content left untouched so the viewer is not confused of how you got from point A to point B. For example, if I wanted to show the viewer how to use RxJava with an observable, I would first need to install RxJava. Here's what that lesson would look like. To install RxJava, you open your application's build.gradle file, and you'll need to add two dependencies. One is the RxJava dependency. To find that, go to the RxJava homepage. You'll scroll down until you find the implementation. Notice how the implementation has an X and a Y. That means that we need to go find the actual release that this applies to. To do that, return to the RxJava homepage. You'll go ahead and click on the releases link. Find the most recent version, such as this 2.2.5. You'll also need another dependency for Rx Android. You can find that on the Rx Android homepage. You'll find the implementation there as well. Refresh your Gradle dependencies, and you're now ready to create your first observable with RxJava in Android. That would be an example of the first lesson. One thing important to notice, the Gradle refresh process for the dependencies was not shown, as this is a task that the user should already know how to do, and we should not be waiting for the IDE to catch up. Keeping with the theme of teaching bit by bit, the next lesson might show a user how to set up a simple observable to observe an integer value. Here's what a lesson like that would look like. To create your first observable, you just type observable.just, and we'll provide a value of 100, so we're going to observe that value. And then we can subscribe to this. We'll use the Lambda implementation, and we're going to write this to logcat. We'll use the tag of main activity, and we're going to log the value of, I got a value of IT, which is the actual value parameter from this Lambda, which is going to be this integer value of 100 from Rx. When this runs, this will log to logcat, and we'll be able to observe it there. This would show the viewer the second lesson in the progression of teaching bit by bit of how to use a very simple observable, how we can subscribe to it. You've introduced just a couple of concepts at the right time to not overload the user during the progression of the topics. Yes, this lesson is not complete, as we're not doing anything with the disposable, we're not using schedulers, but we're introducing topics bit by bit as to not overload the viewer. So when thinking about developing your content and teaching it, teach each lesson bit by bit as to build on each lesson successively, so the user is taken step by step through the process of learning the application and building it at the same time. When teaching a concept, teach everything in succession and do not overload the viewer with too much information at once. For example, let's assume that you wanted to show the user how to use the map operator. So you'd say, I'm going to introduce the map operator and take the value and multiply it times 2. If this was the first time that they had ever seen anything in regards to this lesson, all of the content here is confusing and extraneous and has not been explained. The viewer is going to be confused of, why is this from array here? Why are we filtering on these values? What is the scan operator doing here? Before we even get to the map, these values are going to distract the viewer from what you're teaching. Therefore, what you should do is start from a particular point in time, such as something like this, and say, okay, we're going to use the map operator. To start, we're going to have an observable which has a bunch of items from an array of integers, such as 100, 101, 200, 201, etc. From there, we are going to perform a map operation and times the value times 2. Then you would explain why you're doing what you're doing. Then upon the next lesson, You would come back and say, now at this point in time, we'd like to perform some other operation. And you perhaps would come here and say, all right, we'd like to filter the value on the modulus of a value that it's equal to 2. Then we'd like to multiply that resulting value times 2 to export the value here. Here you are building upon each lesson individually. Now lastly, if you would like to introduce perhaps the scan operator, you would have another lesson that explains the scan operator, such as this. From here, you could explain what the from array does, the filter, the scan, the map. The viewer now has context of how this observable was created and how everything was constructed inside of your application. Notice the packages over here. There's only one file in the package, main activity. You would not want to be teaching this lesson and say something like this. Here we have an array of integers that we're going to filter, perform a scan operation on, and then map over them and multiply them times 2. Well, now let's introduce a model that's going to allow us to pull some of these values into a model, and we can iterate over the values in the model. Now that you've returned back, you can see something that's quite a bit different here. We have a from array with foo model, but if you were to explain this to a viewer during the actual course, they would be confused as where did foo model come from? Now again, if you look on the package explorer, you'll notice now that there's a model package and a foo model class. This was not shown to the viewer of how to create it, why it was created, where it was created. So this is going to confuse the viewer of where did this file come from. What you would want to do is something like this. Okay, so now we have iterated over a value of arrays of integers. So let's go ahead and create a model inside of our package. To do so, we'll want to create a new package called models. And inside of that models directory, we'll create a new data class, and we'll call this foo model. We'll create a data class. This data class will have a single value that is going to depict an age of someone. So this is just an example. So now we have a data class called foo model inside of our package. We'll go back to main activity, and let's get rid of these other few down here. We don't need them right now for this example. And we're saying now we can actually iterate over an array of models as well. So we create a new foo model, and we'll say that the age equals 1. Say foo model, and the age equals 2. And you can continue to put these inside of here so you have multiple values inside this array. And now when this runs, we'll get a logcat message with the main activity and the subscription value of the foo_model.toString, which will print some information to logcat. This taught the viewer how to create the package, how to create the class, what was inside of the class, and then you were returned back to the actual demonstration and created the values inside of here. The viewer was never lost during the transition from one particular point in time to another point in time. You want to show the progression of how your example is built and how the application is built. You don't want to skip a bunch of steps in between point A and point B. If the viewer can be lost at any point in time during the transition from one section to another, that means we need to introduce the content that explains how to create perhaps a package or a class or various different components so they're not lost during the actual viewing of the course. The sweet spot for most videos is going to be between the 2-minute range and most likely the 6-minute range. That does not mean that your video has to be that long. In fact, you may have videos that are a minute, less than a minute, minute and a half. But what you're going to find on average is that a lot of your videos fall between the 2 to 6 minute range, approaching up to the 8-minute range on your videos. There is a hard, steadfast rule that no video should be longer than 12 minutes long. If you find your video is 12 minutes long, most likely you are teaching more than one concept in a video, and it should be trimmed into a couple of videos, either in post-production or the videos should be re-recorded so that they are small lessons that are taught bit by bit. After you've edited your video, you will need to export it to HD. To do that, hit File, Export, Make sure you have a title for your file, wherever you would like to save it. You can use type automatic, encoding normal, and ensure that the resolution is 1920 by 1080. Uncheck letterbox content, click export, and your video will now be exported in HD. When recording your audio and video together, it's best to record in short segments. This allows you to take a break and also gives you space in between in which you can edit in post-production if you do make a mistake. Furthermore, it allows you to repeat certain items if you do make a mistake so you don't have to start the recording all over again. For example, if this lesson were titled, How to Work with Multiple RxJava Operators, I would start maybe with something like this. First, we're going to take the filter operator, and the filter operator will allow us to filter the items from the observable stream, and we want to make sure that the modulus is 0. So we're filtering out all of the odd items. Okay, here I took a break. I would be taking a break before I went on to the next operator that I would put inside of the observable stream. So I would take 10-15 seconds, and then I'd continue on just like this. Next, we'll use the scan operator to accumulate the values. So we'll take the T1 input value and add it to the T2 value. And this will take the 100, add it to the 200, which would be 300. And then the next iteration would take 300 plus 300, which would turn to 600, etc. Once again, now I would stop, gather my thoughts, and continue on teaching one segment at a time. Take one segment of any thought process you have that you would like to teach that, stop, give yourself room to breathe and think before you make a mistake, then continue on. This is very useful if you are recording audio and video at the same time. Recording high-quality audio is difficult, and it's very common to make mistakes. Using the double clap will help make your life a lot easier in post-production. The double clap occurs when you know that you make a mistake in your audio recording. Take a few second pause, and then perform a double clap, and it sounds like this. Take a few more seconds, and continue recording. This allows you to keep recording without having to stop the playhead, restart your recording every single time, which can be very slow. Once your recording is done, as you see here on the screen, you can look at your timeline and you'll see the blank spots that you know that you already need to edit out. However, when the double clap occurs, you'll see 2 peaks in the waveform, as shown here, right around 5.5 seconds. This signifies an area where an error was made during the audio recording. Therefore, you know that you can go ahead and edit those pieces out, or that you need to draw attention to it. So here, you can just go ahead and edit this content out, and you're good to go. All of your videos should have the same audio levels to ensure a consistent experience throughout your entire course. If you've just got done recording inside of ScreenFlow, your screen may look like this, and if you play it, your audio may sound something like this. To get started with Kotlin development, you'll need an IDE. You'll notice it sounds okay. However, that's actually not loud enough, and we can tell by the waveform here. Very often, if your recording environment is clean of any external noise, you won't have to run it through any post-processing tools, and the default ScreenFlow tools will suffice. From there, you can select the audio track, click Smooth Volume Levels. You'll notice you can now see the waveform much clearer, and then select Ducking. Ducking basically takes the waveform and ensures that it's 10% lower than the peaks. Now let's take a listen and hear what we see again. To get started with Kotlin development, you'll need an IDE. You can see it's much louder, and if you continually perform this across all of your lessons, the audio levels will remain consistent. There are times when your audio levels are simply not consistent, or you're having a very hard time getting a consistent audio level across your lessons. To do that, you want to use an external tool known as Auphonic. And so first, you'll need to actually export the audio from the application. So you'll go to a manual type here, go to preset lossless audio only. We'll go ahead and put the file in a location where I know it's at. And we'll export, this will export only the audio track from this. Once your file is exported, you go to auphonic.com you want to sign up for a free account, which gives you 2 hours of audio processing for free per month. And then you log in. Once logged in, you'll select new production and you'll upload your file. From there, you can scroll down to the output files. You want to use a lossless file format. We'll go ahead and stick with WAV. I prefer to add a suffix on the end of the file name to ensure that the file is distinguishable from the original. So here the output file would be called 01 install an IDE auphonic.wav. Go ahead and click mono because we want it to be a mono file. Then down here, we'll want to make sure we also select a noise and hum reduction. Make sure the loudness target is the -16 LUFs podcast and mobile setting. And you hit start production. As soon as you're ready, you'll hit start production again. This will ensure the file starts to upload. Once the file is then uploaded, Auphonic will start processing it in the background. You can then go back to your productions tab and see it process here. The longer the file is, the longer it will take to process. You can hit refresh or continue to wait on the IDE or inside of the web browser. Once it's complete, you can select it and you can see the input value and the output value. You can also preview the sound. To get started with Kotlin development, you'll need an IDE. You'll notice that Auphonic does remove additional levels of any background noise. If you're having trouble with background noise, I highly recommend that you use Auphonic. Now that you have this, download the file. Once your file is downloaded, you'll go back to ScreenFlow, select the Media button, and then you can go back to your File Explorer and drag over your processed audio file. Now you can drag this audio file directly into the timeline. Notice this is the version that was before. This is the version that's after. They're the exact same length as we exported the audio originally out of ScreenFlow and re-imported it after processing through Auphonic. You can delete the original file. And now you're ready to start editing your lesson. Let's take a quick listen of what it sounds like. To get started with Kotlin development, you'll need an IDE. This will ensure that your audio is consistent throughout all of your lessons, so you can either use the smooth volume levels or Auphonic. When recording audio and video, it's common to make mistakes that need to be edited out in post-production. For example, in a previous video that I recorded, it took about 5 minutes to record the video with mistakes. After it was edited, the video was down around 2 minutes and 53 seconds. To quickly edit out the pieces that you don't want, you can use Ripple Delete. To do that, you'll highlight a section that you do not want. And to do that, what you're going to do is place your playhead and click and drag over the area that you don't want. So for example, perhaps it was this section. I'll go to Edit, Ripple Delete. And what will happen is it'll actually ripple down the actual playhead. So let's take this a bit further and say, perhaps I don't want this section either. Edit, Ripple Delete, or you can use a shortcut key to speed things up. You'll notice it deleted that section and then brought the rest of the content on these tracks and slid it up against to where the playhead is. Now this is very useful. If I need to go down further down here and realize that perhaps this section was a mess up, I could use the shortcut key and delete it. Therefore, the playhead and the audio and video stay in sync and saves you time in editing. As soon as you are done editing your video, you need to watch your video from start to finish, as a viewer would watch it. So return your playhead to 0 seconds and press play and start watching the video. This will actually expose you to many areas in which you did not actually see before that might need to be refined. For example, you'll catch certain audio inflections, certain recording effects that you need to improve or remove, certain noises in the background, such as dogs barking, airplanes, motorcycles driving by. You'll catch random instances where you have a blank black screen for no reason. You'll catch the instances where there's no audio present for some reason. Think of watching your video as quality assurance for your final product. A great video recording has great audio. Nothing will ruin an audio recording faster than poor audio. Many instructors will record their audio during a quiet time in their space. This could be late at night or early in the morning. If you have the luxury of having a private office, you can record it there. If you don't have that luxury, you can also use a walk-in closet. A walk-in closet works because of all the clothes that are surrounding the walls act as a natural deadening system for audio. One of the worst things that can happen in audio is the echo. Echo just makes the audio sound very poor, and so you want to limit the echo. Having more porous materials will absorb the audio waves, which is why a walk-in closet is great. If you can set up a small environment in a walk-in closet, that's perfect. If you do not have a walk-in closet, another option is to build what's known as a blanket fort, something that all of us have built when we were children. Set up a couple of chairs, bring your laptop in and your recording microphone, and record inside of a blanket. It will be a little warm, but it will absorb the majority of all of the background noise you're going to have. If you're inside of a home, an office, or any other type of environment that has hardwood and empty walls, you're going to have a very hard time with echo. If you have this environment and have hard floors such as tile, wood, or laminate, or anything like that, such as cement too, you can go ahead and deaden the sound by covering the floor with pillows, blankets, couch cushions, anything that's very squishy and could absorb a lot of sound, which is why I usually opt for cloth covered types of things, as sound does not ricochet off them that well. If you live in an environment that is very loud, such as some city environments, it might be good to try to use a blanket fort as well as some other sound deadening mechanisms. Other couple of tips as well. Be sure to feed your dogs and cats and other animals if you have them. Turn off your cell phone ringer and your house phone ringer. If you do encounter additional outside noises such as leaf blowers from landscapers, an airplane flying over, dogs barking, a motorcycle driving by, you may have to re-record those audio components. If you can edit them out, please do. But you want to make sure that you reduce your background noise in your audio recording, as nothing can kill a video quality faster than poor audio quality. There are two ways to record videos. One, you record the audio and video at the same time. This has been shown in other lessons, such as teach everything bit by bit, teach one segment at a time. This approach can be very error-prone, as you may make a lot of mistakes and have to go back and do a lot of post-production. Furthermore, you may realize during post-production that you forgot to mention something, and editing that in later can be very difficult. Another way to do this is going to be through scripting. For example, this is a script that I wrote for a lesson entitled Set Up Data Binding in Your Android Project. I scripted out everything that I was going to say. I even put the code there so I could remind myself of what I was going to be talking about when I was going to be doing it. I wrote down everything as it was going to be said. Then at that point in time, I'd fire up the recorder, record the audio simply by reading the script. And then as soon as the audio was complete, I'd go back and re-record the video without any audio and overlay the two together. This does take a lot more time. However, it's far less error-prone. You'll find that you sound much more professional because everything is already planned out. In order to get to this stage, you actually have to create your sample app. You have to create your demo. You actually have to walk through the process yourself. And while you're doing it, you're creating the script for it as well. I like to call this TDD for screencasting, because you are literally test driving the content, writing it as you go before you actually record it. By the time you've recorded the content and the video, you actually have a complete screencast that requires very minimal editing. So there are two approaches to do this. You can record the audio and the video together and use the post-production tools such as Ripple Delete, recording things bit by bit and segment by segment. Or you can use a script, plan it out, script everything out, record the audio, record the video, overlay them together, and you're done. Which one works for you? This is something you're going to have to experiment with. Sometimes I can record audio and video together at the same time with a lot of success. Other times, I simply can't do it. It depends on the topic and what I'm teaching. And it depends on each instructor's preferences. So this is something that you're going to have to experiment with to see what works better for you.
Thanks for watching the course. I really hope you learned a lot from it. Now, as I stated earlier on, some of the things and tools you may have seen inside of this course might have changed or maybe have been completely removed, and there's different tools out there. That's fine. You may also be wondering, do I still produce my screencasts in the same way? Do I still produce my technical content in the same way that I've taught here? In fact, yes, I do. Now, the only thing that has changed is traditionally, I would always script out everything I did beforehand. Now, as I became more comfortable with my own recording process, knowing my intonation, how I'm going to speak, the speed at which I'm going to teach, I have learned where I can take particular pauses inside of my recordings. And therefore, I've now adopted more of a model where I record on the fly and just take more breaks. The recorder will be running the entire time, so I might be recording an 8-minute lesson and I might be recording 8 1-minute segments, and then in post-production I'll remove all of those breaks so it's a nice, smooth, seamless, cohesive lesson. Now this, for me, allows me to ship a lot faster. When I started out, I couldn't do that. I just made far too many mistakes. So which one should you use? You should use whichever one allows you to ship fastest, because you have to remember, any videos that are unedited and unpublished that are sitting on your hard drive are absolutely worthless. You want to get this video content out and share it with people. This is when it's going to be valuable. So don't worry about being perfect, because remember, perfect is the enemy of done. Thanks for watching.